Welcome to today's show. Our topic today is other dimensions. I want to say a quick hello to our listeners in Excelsior, Minnesota. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you being here with us. Let's jump right into this. I'm Ivory LaNoue. This is Rozlyn Reynolds. We own Sedona Soul Sisters, and we do have a lot of topics we cover here, but this is one I thought would be good because Roz and I both are what you call mystics. And so mystics really are going to other dimensions. I think that's what really brought it home for me of how other dimensions are very much a reality. What was it for you, Roz?
Actually, I find that my clients tend to be much better and more well-read than I am at times. So I had a client one day and I was discussing astral travel, and I was discussing, she was having some experiences. And then I was discussing going in and out of this dimension. And she said, with this sort of stunned look on her face, she said, well, you're not a psychic then, you're a mystic. And I said, all righty then.
So you know what that means, Roz? We need to find ourselves a good mountaintop that we can be up on and people climb up the mountain to come see us. Isn't that what mystics do?
I guess. I don't know. I was so stunned to find that out.
I never really thought about it till you told me about that. Like, you didn't tell me about that client, but just telling me about if you travel to other dimensions, whether it's spontaneously or you're purposely doing it, you're a mystic, because that's what mystics do. And for me, it's primarily when I'm wide awake. Most of the time, thankfully, it's when I'm lying in bed, but before I'm ready to go to sleep, that I go other places. I don't like it when I go to other places and I'm out in public or driving. I really, that's very uncomfortable to me. I think it's worse than driving drunk, driving while in another dimension,
Yeah, it's a little scary, I have to say, because I started thinking about some of the things that, I've been doing and have been happening to me since childhood. And I suddenly was just recalling all these times when I have just suddenly realized, wow, where was I just then?
Yeah.
And I have had it happen when I was driving, and that is very scary. Like, I had an experience a few years ago where I was in a different city. I was not real familiar with their freeways, but I'd been to that city before, so I kind of knew. And I got on the freeway. It was just simple little point A to point B, little commutey thing. And right as I entered the freeway, I realized that I felt like I was leaving my body, or I wasn't in my body. And I turned the wrong way and I drove on the freeway in heavy traffic for probably close to 30 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
And I do like to say that I'm a pretty good driver. I'm pretty in the moment, but this was an amazing experience, and it was pretty scary because suddenly I looked over beside me and I realized I was still driving down the freeway in very heavy traffic, which I hadn't even really been cognizant of. And I looked over and I recognized where I was, and I was a long way from where I'd gotten on the freeway. And I realized I'd been like downloading things. Like, it was quite amazing. And that was just a reality check. I mean, other times when I have left the dimension, I'm aware that I'm not, that I'm A, not in my body, and B, I'm not where I thought I was, but that time was a shocker. So
Well, I'm glad you came out of it safe. That could have gone a very different way.
it could have, and it was scary. It was really scary. And I got off the freeway and I was kind of freaking out a little bit because I'd never had that happen before when I wasn't commuting somewhere. And wow.
So far, it's been short periods of that when I'm driving, and it's very rare, thank God, because the crazy ones, the ones that go on and on, sometimes, for close to an hour, that's when I'm lying in bed. And now I've started doing scientific experiments with those travels to other dimensions. I told you I was a little afraid that if I got up and walked out of the bed and like into what I saw, that I wouldn't be able to make it back. But now it happened by accident. And that was a Christmas Eve at my sister's house in Peoria, the Phoenix area. And I was in the guest room and I woke up in the wee hours. It was dark. And I was standing up and halfway to the door when I realized, oh, I'm back in that 17th century French palace with all the Rococo stuff. Oh, and I'm standing up in it and I couldn't find the doorknob. There was no wall there with a doorknob. And I just kept trying and I finally was able to find the wall and the doorknob. And when I opened the door, then I was back in my sister's house. But so that was the way that I found out that if I get up and walk around in it, I think I'll be fine. I was fine in that instance. As soon as I found a piece of my dimension, I was back in it.
Well, when you think about it, it really is these multi-dimensional experiences that we have. They really are all about physics. So, a lot of times people talk about being two places at one time and in one space of time. And I really feel like that's exactly what's happening. Your physical body is one place, your soul is traveling elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, it's been some crazy things. Like I was lying in bed in the afternoon, broad daylight, and all of a sudden I was standing in way away from this Taj Mahal looking East Indian building. And there was a long, thin body of water between us, like a fountain, like a man-made waterbed. And then all of a sudden I noticed, I'm looking at that going, that looks like the Taj Mahal. And then all of a sudden I'm being propelled at high speed on a standing position towards the front doors of this place. And I'm screaming because it terrified me. I'm just like, whoosh. And then I just stopped, like quivering stop right in front of the wooden doors, and everything disappeared. So, it doesn't have to be at night. It doesn't have to be when you're sleeping. I think that this is a frequency thing. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And I've talked to some people occasionally about this, and they have experienced some similar events in their lives, but they were always asleep. So when we're sleeping, our brain is moving through the various frequencies of sleep. That has never really been my experience, although I started doing a lot of astral travel when I became a teenager, and I didn't seem to have a lot of control of where I was going, but that sensation of moving really fast, and you were seeing the Taj Mahal, but I mean, I kept seeing stars and flashing lights going by, and I knew I was going somewhere where I was not at home.
I've had that too. And it looks like what you see in movies, sci-fi movies, about like going into a wormhole or black
Yes.
hole. And like there's light shooting and you're like in this long tube and it's bending. And there's a sensation of like flying through it. And then you poof, come out the other side. So I don't know what that's all about, but it does end up in another dimension. I was watching something the other day and they were talking about a theory that your dreams are other dimensions, that everything that you dream about that happens to you in a dream is happening in another dimension, you in another dimension. Have you heard of that before?
I haven't. I haven't.
I
And
thought that was interesting.
yeah, this is really interesting. And this is really kind of humorous in a way to me, because I know when you were a kid, you know, we've talked about this, and you just loved sci-fi,
Still
and
do.
you loved, you know, you had a very imaginative, yeah, you had a very imaginative approach to all that. The only thing I remember really exciting me, that was totally out of the norm, was when I was a kid. I had a little astronomy book that I really loved, and there was a section in there where they talked about how in 1986, I think it was, the comet was going to come back, and everyone was going to be able to see it. Totally escaping my mind the name of that
Is it
comet now,
Haley's
but
Comet?
yes, thank you. And so funny, because when it happened, I mean, when I was a little kid, I always said, I want to live long enough to be able to watch Haley's Comet. You know, that was such a big thing. And then when it actually happened, and I handled the concept of it, you know, I mean, I remember my kids were all in kind of like middle school around that time, high school, middle school. And it was hilariously funny because we were all standing out watching this comet go by. And I was like going, huh, okay, yeah, that's cool. But that wasn't such a big deal.
What a letdown.
Yeah, kind of a disappointment, you know, pretty funny.
Yeah, I can understand that. You know, another thing I think falls under this too that has been, I think is pretty evident. If there's all these other dimensions and they're sort of like slides, one after another, then don't you think the truth is that the afterlife is another dimension?
Yes, I
Especially
do.
because of how quickly spirit can be with us or with multiple people just in a snap of time.
And how it's so fascinating when you go on some of the paranormal YouTube and video channels, etc., and they show spirits coming in and out, and they, you know, you can see them very clearly, and then blip, they're gone.
Yeah. I always tell people that, like, if you want to know where the afterlife is, like, it's like a sheer curtain hanging between you and afterlife, and they just pull it aside and boom, here they are. That's how close they are to us. That's why they know what we're doing. They know what we're thinking and talking about. They can be with us. But as far as like seeing other dimensions, the only thing I know when clients ask me, how can I see other dimensions? How can I experience that? I do think that anybody, I don't think you have to be born a mystic. I think anybody can do it if you raise your frequency high enough and you're really open to the experience. If fear gets in the way, then it might prevent it from happening.
I agree, because being comfortable in other dimensional frequencies is huge. That's a huge aspect. If you're going to be overwhelmed with the thought of like, oh my gosh, what's happening to me? like I was when I was driving in the traffic.
But that's a little
Um,
different situation.
yeah, that I think, you know, allowing our mind and our spirit to embrace the idea that we're always protected too. Like, I never feel threatened. I never feel anything is going on when I'm out there in the cosmos. I never feel, I mean, and I'll be honest, a lot of times I can see other beings. I can see, you know, some entities that look a little scary, but I never feel threatened by them. I
They might
always feel
just
I'm
look so
protected.
different from us, and that might make people feel afraid.
Yeah. And
If you notice, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
If you notice in sci-fi that people in movies and TV shows and books, like when the aliens look a lot like us, they're not so afraid. If the more different they look than us, the more afraid they are. And it's just the unknown. It's just, something new. So maybe it could look wildly different and terrifying and be a very high frequency entity. So we always say, go with how it feels.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate.
Because the flip side of that is there too. What if they're like the Nordics that we covered recently, where they're these beautiful, tall humanoids, but what if they looked like that, but they didn't have good intentions? You'd want to feel that before you just think, oh, they're so pretty, so they must be good.
Yeah, being pretty doesn't make you good.
No. Something that really keeps sticking in my mind since we set this topic, I was thinking about the time that I was laying in bed, and I'm just like thinking, just laying in bed thinking, and the lights are out. And suddenly I realize that really close above my bed is an enormous ancient UFO. And it was so close. I made note of this in my journal. It was so close, like I could see alien symbols etched into it, and I could see where it looked like it'd been in battle. And it was enormous, like like something you'd see like Star Trek Enterprise, but not quite that shape. But it was really close, like maybe 25 feet above my bed, which means that it eclipsed the ceiling of my bedroom, the second floor of the home, and everything above that. And all I could see was that ship and stars, a starry night sky around it. And it was there for maybe 2 hours, just no sound, no nothing. I never saw a being, but it was just there. And suddenly it was like I was outside under a starry sky, and there's a giant alien spacecraft above me. And it wasn't scary at all, but it gave me lots of time to really like study it and get a good look and get a feel for it. And I just wondered, like, why was I there, or why was it there? I was just curious.
I think our visitors from the cosmos who come in, a lot of times I feel, just mainly because of my experiences when I was younger, but I feel like they come sometimes when we're having illness, when we're having problems, and they're there with the intention of helping, of doing good works, of healing. And I think when you put it in that perspective, I know very much that the ones who came when I was very sick, when I was 10, they came, they were there specifically to do some kind of healing work. And we hear people talk sometimes about, and I know you've experienced this, crossing out into what we would call the hospital ships.
Yeah.
The healing ships where they're working on you. It's funny because a lot of stuff that you read about that, the people that go, that are taken on board, they're terrified, and they don't have good memories of what went on there. But I always wonder, like, were they maybe doing some kind of medical something?
It could be. I don't have experiences like that. As you know, they just did some pretty miraculous healing on my back and took away issues that the surgeons had said, I'm going to have surgery on my back. And I never did, and it went away. So I really feel like that's dimensional too. Like going to that ship is dimensional travel. And the reason I think so is because every time it happens, not that it's happened a lot, but when it happens, I'm in my room, but I'm not in my room. And I can see some things that, like, I can see the outline of my bed, and I can kind of vaguely see some furniture, but then it's really like there's another room on top of that, overlaid on top of it, that's more real, and it's on the ship. And there's that light that goes like this. It's like it's a tall, about 2.5 feet tall, and it goes like this when they're working on me. And I have no idea what that is. And sometimes like it goes like up and down my body and side to side, but it moves like this. It's really kind of up and down, side to side. And they're always such a gentle touch. Like when they're working on my back, it's almost like a feathery touch. There's nothing scary about anything happening with it. So I'm free until I go to sleep, because I always will go to sleep in the middle of that. I'm sure they make me do, but that I'm just kind of looking around and thinking, what do I see more clearly, my bedroom or the ship? Trying to decide, what do I see in my bedroom? What do I see on the ship? But the frustrating thing is I can't really see the beings working on me. I see white, but I don't really see much of the beings working on me. But I got to say, they must be good beings, because I was in agony for so long and they just took the worst of it away pretty quickly. So, and it never came back to that level. As you know, I was like having trouble sitting, walking, standing. It was terrible.
Well, I think, you've been, probably of all the people I know, you've been the most in contact with them from a medical perspective of the things you had going on, and all of the things that you experienced, where you have tried all of the normal earthly things and none of those worked.
And I
And
would have
then
never known about that except for that mysterious woman, Tina, who came by our business. Remember, she came in, she was interested in renting a room. She told us about the medical ship and suggested told me how to get onto it. And then we never heard from her again, never saw her. Nobody knew who she was. It was so odd. And if I would have never known, I almost wondered, did they send her to talk to me? It was odd.
I'm sure they did.
She was super nice lady. Tina, the alien. I don't know if you're Tina, if you're out there listening, let us know who you are. I want to thank you. But all of this stuff, I mean, just the reason I think that anybody can develop the skill to travel to other dimensions is because after talking about this to some of my clients who'd never experienced it, and they work on their frequency, they get to a level where all of a sudden I'll get an email or a phone call. Ivory, I went to another dimension. I was lying in bed and this happened, or I was sitting in my living room and suddenly I wasn't. And they're so excited. And it really is just like everything else. Y'all probably think that we're really hammering this point home, but we can't emphasize enough how important it is to raise your frequency and keep it high. Whatever you want to experience, the more cool things you want to experience, you need to raise your frequency higher and work on keeping it there. And I was just talking to somebody today about how hard it is to keep frequency high, get it high and keep it high right now with all the negative, dense energy surrounding our planet right now. It is just constant reminders, constantly catching yourself, thinking negatively or dwelling or worrying, all the things that can bring your frequency down, and consciously bringing it back up again, or you won't experience these things. You have to be, it's kind of like when Roz and I are doing psychic readings, we have to get into a space where we're just sort of not quite here. We're a little bit out there so we can tune into people's energy. And when we do mediumship, I know for me, I have to really tune out. I have to really raise my frequency before I start and keep it high. And it's very hard to track time, like our time we have in this dimension, and be in the right frequency to do mediumship. And I think it's kind of similar to traveling to other dimensions. You have to be able to let go somewhat too of your thoughts and being in this dimension. I hope that makes sense. Can you make that make sense, Roz?
I just think you mentioned it earlier, but I mean, it's tapping into how you feel about things. I mean, I find myself, struggling at times with all the things going on. If I allow myself to get sucked into all of it, I can just be fuming. And that really takes your frequency like plunk. You hit hit the ground.
I think probably the big one lately is people telling me how hopeless they feel. They just can't see light at the end of the tunnel for the crazy situation our country's in, that the world is in, and they feel hopeless. And I'm trying to encourage them and giving them concrete things to do. I mean, listen to music you love, dance, get outside, sing, laugh, hang out with friends, do things that bring you joy, because when you're laughing and you're feeling happy, your frequency immediately goes up. And you're not going to change anything by worrying about it and giving up and feeling hopeless. Nothing will change if too many of us do that. So we're here for a reason. You know, if you call yourself a light worker, or you may be a light worker and not even know what that is, just somebody who's here on the planet at this time to help humanity. You're here to lift frequency and help people shift forward as a whole planet of people spiritually. And so you can't afford to let yourself get into feeling hopeless and angry and or any of those negative emotions, because you will be stymieing your own progress, and you certainly will not be experiencing other dimensions.
Yeah, they just take you down badly. You start to go with that negative flow.
I don't
So
think any
it's
of us
hard.
are perfect. I mean, we all worry sometimes and we get afraid sometimes, but it's really about catching yourself. But I don't know, what would you recommend to somebody if they really want to experience another dimension?
I think we all have the potential to put ourselves in a state of extreme calmness, extreme balance, love, compassion, nurturing. And if you can get yourself balanced in that state, and I used to envision myself floating on an azure blue lake, and the sky was blue and the lake was blue and the water was so clear I could see the bottom of that lake. I mean, it was truly like an alpine environment, you know, just so beautiful. And that would be the start of my journey into a different dimension. And I was a pretty high-strung kid. So for me, that was like something I really needed to do
I
to
was a
help
very
myself.
high-strung kid. Are you shocked?
I think people who are very, very sensitive and notice everything, and you know, like we did, um, that puts us in that category.
Yes, yes, indeed. My dad would call me the princess and the pea. And we didn't know why I was so sensitive to everything. Now I do. Didn't know for a long time. I just thought I was ultra sensitive. So I think something else here that's just really basic, if you're really interested in getting to the point where you can experience other dimensions, or perhaps you have and you're not sure how you did and you can't make it happen again. I think meditation is really important for that. When you get to a place where you've got to be able to let go of your thoughts, empty your mind, and setting an intention. I've always been big on setting an intention before meditation. With this meditation, my intention is to have a trip to another dimension. Clearly have a trip to another dimension while I'm in this meditation. And you keep doing it. So maybe it doesn't happen the first time you meditate and ask that. So you keep doing it and doing it until it happens, because you got to find what works for you. Maybe the way that I go into another dimension wouldn't work for you. And frankly, I don't try. I can't even think of a time that I've tried to go into another dimension, but there's just crazy things. I should get my binder out, one of my journals. I have all these things. There'll be times when it's just night after night. And I remember telling Roz, I was lying in bed one night, and all of a sudden the whole right side of my room, including halfway over the ceiling, was giant amethyst crystals, and including the doorway into the bathroom. And I could see them on the wall in the mirror of the bathroom, like really huge, thick amethyst crystals. They were there for hours. Nothing happened. nothing came out of them. You know, I just felt like myself, but the right side of the room was like an amethyst, giant amethyst crystal cavern. I, I'm not trying to have these things happen. I'm just trying to get mellowed out to go to sleep, kind of calm my mind down, and get a little downtime. And it's hello. Oh, so I don't know if that's, I don't know. I think sometimes too, like when you do that travel, just be prepared. You can go to places other than other dimensions. You could also go to other planets, you know, and I think you'd be hard pressed to know whether you're in another dimension or another planet, because how do you know? Especially if you don't run into any beings and they can't answer questions for you. You're just figuring it out. So, you know, that's another reason I love journals, because I can look back on these things and I will have forgotten some of the most amazing experiences. And I'm like, how could you forget that? But so much happens that you just forget.
You're floating off. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Almost all the time when I have this happen, I'm going to that. It looks like Palace of Versailles, like that kind of interior with the real fancy Rococo, and looks like the Palace of Versailles, which I go there again and again and again. And that place must have some connection for me, but it's lovely, but I don't know why I keep going there.
I think you're called.
To go to the Palace of Versailles. I've been there.
I think you lived there.
I did.
I'm sure of
And
it.
the tour guide was like, oh, we're going to go to Marie Antoinette's bedroom first. And I turned left. And she said, oh, you've been here before? And I was confused. And I said, no. And she goes, how did you know it was down there? Then I was really confused. I was like, I don't know. But I knew where lots of things were in that palace. So I remember that vividly. It was fun going there. But I don't know, where do you usually go when this happens for you, Roz?
You know, it's interesting. I love pictures that I see of Switzerland and Austria. And I know that a lot of times I go to places in those Alps, you know.
It's so
There's
beautiful.
something about the energy there that is
Oh,
amazing. And other
oh,
times I seem to go to places where I know I'm in some kind of a dimensional field where colors are amazing. Just, you know, the sand is pink. And I actually worked at a place. I took we took a temporary contract job and we worked up in Big Sur, and I was working at a beach up there, beautiful place, and the sand was purple. And when I first walked down there and saw it, I thought, I've been here. I know I've been here before. And there was a huge rock off in the ocean, and it had a doorway cut in it, and you could see that it had been cut. And at wintertime on the solstice, the sun would set and it would shine directly through that doorway. And it's supposed to be attached to all of the aspects of Lemurian, you know, mythical and mystical life that was going on off the coast of California. And I could really believe it, because when I went there, I just knew that I had been there before. And that pink and purple sand really got me.
I've seen black sand and I've seen light pink sand and white sand, but never purple sand.
If you ever want to entertain yourself online, just go on and put in Pfeiffer. It's spelled Pfeiffer. It's people's last name. Pfeiffer Beach in
I will
Big
have to
Sur,
look that up.
and you'll be amazed. They have
I will.
pictures of that sunset coming through that doorway. And I really felt like I was like, okay, I've been here before. I know this place.
Yeah, that's what a memory from a past time just pokes right through. Well, we are
Yes.
out of time today already. I want to
Wow.
thank you all for tuning in today. And If you've enjoyed what you're listening to, please subscribe to our show. And if you have questions about us or our services, visit our website, sedonasoulsisters.com. Tune in next week. Our topic is traits of an old soul. I think you're going to really enjoy that one. And in the meantime, we hope you have an enlightening week.
Bye.